Morning. Morning. Thanks for coming this morning. This may be one of the most informative meetings, regardless of the plan. So today is our Market Feasibility Meeting, and it'll be conducted by Aaron Arnett. Aaron Arnett's an economist. He also has a degree in architecture, and he has a company in Greenville, South Carolina called Arnett Muldrow. Aaron and his company work all over the United States, and they do community planning, they do economic studies, they do community branding. So Aaron's on our team especially to understand the market dynamics of Beech Mountain. And there's some very interesting things here, very different from many of the other towns that we work in. And so his presentation is about an hour to an hour and a half today. And then also Aaron has said afterwards, if you'd like to talk about specific items, he's available. So it'll be off camera, and you guys just continue to chat. So by the way, today's meeting, as well as all of our public meetings, are being filmed. Ian is our cinematographer, and they'll be put on a special YouTube site that has all of the different Beech Mountain public meetings. So if you want to go back and look at anything, you're welcome to do it there. So without any further ado, let me introduce Aaron, our economist.
Thanks, David. All right, thanks for everybody coming this morning. And David mentioned it might go an hour and a half. Hopefully we won't have to go that long, but it depends on what kind of conversation we're going to have. One question before we get started. Who in the room was in our meetings up at the Buckeye Recreation Center in May? Okay, we've got 4 or 5 people that are newcomers. For those that were here before, you'll see some data that was presented before, and I'm probably going to go over it a little bit more high level. For those that weren't here before, you'll see some market research. But for that, what we're going to do in this meeting is we're going to go over the community survey that we've done. It's still ongoing, by the way. If you hadn't taken it, there's an opportunity to take it, and I've got a QR code in here a couple of times that you can capture and take it. I'm going to close it into the week. You'll hear me say that multiple times.
There's also cards in the back.
Oh, that's good. So there's cards with the QR code on it. Y'all can take it on your way out, or I can hand them out to you if you haven't done it. But thank you, Whitney. So first thing, survey over. Second thing, I'm going to show a couple slides that shows the impact of lean this past year on us compared to previous year. It's pretty interesting and pretty much what you would expect. And then the last thing, we're going to review some of those key findings that we presented the last time that we were here. So with that, we'll jump right into it. So the community survey, it started in May when we were here last, and it's still going on. As I mentioned, if you haven't done it, do it by the end of the week, because this weekend I'm gonna flip the switch and turn it off on that. But in that time, so it's been a month and a half, we've had 448 responses. It's been a few more since I pulled this last week. All the questions kind of centered on perceptions of your place. We were talking about that earlier. Business needs, that's a big thing, especially if we're talking about this potential commercial center or development area. I mean, it's mixed use area, let's call it that. What do we need? What do we need in terms of businesses? What do we need in terms of activities? What do we need in terms of services to support us, the folks that live here, whether we're full-time or not full-time, as well as the tourists that come in. And then there are questions about what you feel like you need in terms of public spaces and improvements, as well as transportation as well. So that's what was covered in the survey. So, who participated in the survey? Of all those 458 or 48, whoever it was, people that participated, 37% live in the primary zip code. Now, y'all know this, and I'll mention this when we get into the data, that y'all's zip code, 28604, is a pretty big zip code. It obviously covers the town of Beech Mountain, but it also covers Banner Elk. You know, it's a pretty large area. But still, at the end of the day, in terms of commerce, that's your bread and butter market. That's your local market. We'll talk about that a little bit later. 37% were from the primary zip code. 40% were from the two counties that are here, Watauga and Ashe County. About 2/3 folks live in North Carolina, and then you can see Florida, and I know there's at least one Florida person in here right now. Anybody in Florida? Okay, we got 2 Florida people, so anyway, that was 21%. Now the interesting thing is, and for those of you all that weren't here before, I'll explain this a little bit later, but we also have data for 2 years of placer data. And placer data basically locational data with using your phone devices to basically tell who's coming in and out of town over the course of the year. This particular survey, this is a pretty broad cross-section, you know, just over 1/3 of people that live here. The rest live outside, a lot within the region, and then some of our other states. This one's, I don't want to say it's tilted local, but it's more local than the placer data, because the placer data, 37% of people that did this that did the survey, Beach, zip code, there was just 8% of the people over the past year. And again, this will be more clear when I get to that part of the presentation, but just 8% of the people that came into Beech Mountain over the past year were from that zip code. And same thing from the counties. I mentioned 40% came from our 2 counties here. When we did the placer study, 13%. So granted, it's just 1/3 of people that live here, but this is tilted a little bit more towards our regional market as opposed to the full-fledged yearly market that we had before. So we asked people, so what's your connection? And you could, on this particular one, all these numbers aren't going to add up to 100 because you could basically check off multiple things there, because you might work in Beach and you might be a full-time resident, so you would be both. But you can see right there, 42%, the largest area of people that own second homes or vacation homes. And I know there's some in this room right now that fall in that category. Next was full-time residents. So I think this really gives us a good understanding, especially when we look at some of the other questions that were asked, or what I'll share with you here, of who the audience is. Primarily full-time residents and second homeowners, and more second homeowners than full-time residents are the people that were answering these questions. Now, all of them, and I'm saying that just to sort of help us understand who our audience is. But when I say that, I'm definitely not saying, well, we're not getting enough residents input here. That's not what I'm implying at all. Because the people that own a second home here, when they're here, they're essentially acting as full-time residents. You know, they need the things that full-time residents need and not tourists need. So, you know, I kind of see them as sort of a little bit of one and the same in terms of the local market. Now, the cool thing is, and I haven't done this yet, but I am going to do this. 2 things. I'm going to parse out the data to see how the answers vary between full-time residents, second homeowners, and visitors. We'll be able to see what those different people think about the community. And the other thing I'm going to do, we did ask age in this one. I'm going to parse it out by age as well to see if there's any variances in the answers. But this is who participated in the survey. And again, y'all see this before, and I mentioned it earlier. This makes a lot of sense. 42% second home or vacation home. Y'all know that close to 80% of your housing units that you have here in Beach are not full-time employees. So they're second homes or they're vacant, full-time residents. They're second home or vacation homes. So that all of this makes sense. Let's see if I can close this. Sorry, there's something in my way. All right, next we asked about How do I turn that off? Why did I do that? All right, that's gonna annoy me. Oh wait, is that it? Okay. That's annoying. All right. We asked when they're coming, how often they visit. Bulk of them, a little over a third, just once a year come here. So those are visits, right? For the most part. 2 to 3 times a year, 4 more times a year, that's probably visitors as well as the second homeowners, and then once every few years. So this particular one was specifically for visitors. So if you answered that previous question that you were a visitor, you went to a couple of specific questions that if you weren't a visitor, you didn't see. So what seasons do you visit Beech Mountain? 80% summertime, 70%, and again, you could enter multiple things on here. 70% wintertime, just a little bit less than that fall, and then spring. And I think this kind of coincides with your, let's call them 3 spikes. You probably have 4 if we want to count the stick season, but we know that wintertime's our big peak in terms of tourists. Summertime right now is our big peak in terms of vacation. Fall is a peak with the leaf season, and specifically the month of October and around there. Those are the 3 spikes, and you'll see that with the placer data later. I do think when we look at the placer data and we know the warm bodies that are in town at different times of year, winter is definitely, y'all know all this because y'all have to deal with traffic and everything else and skiers and all of that, but winter is definitely by far the biggest spike of all. I do think that this might just be the time of year we're doing this. People are more engaged with the community right now, this summer, and so therefore, more folks that tend to visit here in the summertime are answering this survey. But we know that winter is the largest spike here in the community. So now so that's about kind of who we're talking to. Now we're talking about what people want. So, well, this is still what they do while they're here. What activities do you engage in Beech Mountain? And you can see here, the highest ranking ones are hiking and summer concerts. The lowest ranking ones are disc golf and mini adventure tower. Do y'all even have disc golf here? The resort does, so that's why that's on there. I was wondering, why did I put that on there? But that's why, because it is often there. A lot of others, which we should have had golf on there, because there was tons of golf, Beech Mountain Club, golf. So it's probably way over here. Pickleball and tennis. Y'all got great recreational resources in this town for a community that's under 700 full-time residents. We know you're really bigger than that, but you've got great recreational facilities in this community, and people are enjoying them, whether it be golf and the club and pickleball and tennis. Now, one of the things, a lot of these we did ask people open-ended questions on them as well, and I'm looking at my notes from time to time on each one of these different slides, and I'll share with you some of the comments that were made, and I just thought it was funny. What activities do you do in Beech Mountain? Someone selected other, and the very first comment was the activity that I do in Beech Mountain is avoiding the tourists and the idiots. I don't know how good a day that is, but I just thought it's funny. I don't know if the tourists are idiots or if they're different segments of our market. I don't know, but I just thought that was funny. Obviously not relevant. What places have you been in the past year? So ski resort, Buckeye Recreation Center, which is amazing. The lake is amazing. Farmers Market, Lake Coffee, I know is a big asset that came up over, and you'll see this in a second, came up over and over again as one of our favorite assets in the community. And then others, kind of on the lower end, Gem Mine, Bike Park, Sunset Park, the Land of Oz. And I know Land of Oz, I know that particularly with the hurricane, that they didn't have their event And then others were mentioned, Beech Mountain Club, Fred's, who doesn't love Fred's, the bar at the top of the mountain, trails, and then Shane Park, which of course we know is being restored right now. So, but yeah, so these are the types of places that people have visited the past year. And there was a lot of comments here and about, well, you know, some of these places I visited in the past year, but I didn't visit certain things because of the hurricane this year. You know, case in point might be the Land of Oz, but, or certainly Shane Park. You know, you're not visiting that right now. So that was mentioned. Perceptions of the place. Now, these are all weighted scores right here. We asked people to rank their perception of the place. I think we use, on a scale of 1 to 5. So do you think Beech Mountain is a great place to live? 1 if you don't, 5 if you do, okay? And anywhere in between if you sort of think in between. And you can see the things that rank the highest, it is a great place to live. We see that, we felt that, we've talked to y'all, we know that y'all love your place. All of the, I talked about these recreational activities, resources that you have here. You've got great venues like this venue and others around the community. It really, truly is a great place to live, and we've felt that. Has a unique history and culture. Now, I haven't been to the History Museum yet, but I do know a little bit about the history of the community, and I was talking to Peter on the way here this morning. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I've never worked in a place quite like, I've never worked in a place like Beech Mountain before. I've worked in other mountain communities, I've worked in other resort communities, I've worked in other communities that were formed as a destination or a planned community that ultimately became a municipality, which is what's happened here. But your history here truly is different. It is unique. Everything from the Beech Mountain Club to the resort to the homes to the octagonal homes to Land of Oz, that's part of your history as well. You really have something that's unique. Has unique visitor destinations. Obviously, that ranks pretty high. We know that. And the things that rank low, you might not be surprised. You don't have a variety of shopping opportunities, folks felt. And they also felt that we don't really have a whole lot of dining variety here. And then folks felt that, you know what, we're maybe not as walkable as we would like it to be. That's a big one, and that'll come up over and over again in this survey. And I say it's big because obviously you're a mountain community, and that makes walking from one place to the other a little bit more of a challenge. But I do know, and you'll see, particularly tonight when we start talking about the different ideas and concepts that the team has thought about based off of your input, a lot of that really is being driven by creating a walkable community, particularly in the core area of Beech. Where our study area is, where Town Hall is, and the visitor center is, where Fred's is, where the Brick Oven Pizza is, all of that. We want to make that more walkable. You'll see that all throughout these design concepts. That's really important to you all, is that we want to be more walkable. Came up over and over again. So, our commercial district, I don't have a map. If you've been here before, and I've just alluded to it, you know this. We're really focused on that area that I described, Town Hall, Sledding Hill, Fred's, that whole area. That's our focus. And we're thinking about, let's call it, for lack of a better term, a downtown district, whether it be commercial, whether it be mixed use, as we've talked about before. What would be your priority for that as we're envisioning this new downtown for our area? And again, safetiness and attractiveness rank high. I think that's really important here. I think you all are an incredibly safe community compared to a lot of places where we work. But we also know, and that's important to you all, but attractiveness is important. I mean, you look at any of these windows and you just see beauty everywhere. You look at the architecture that you all have in this community, and you really have some unique architecture. You know, there's that kind of mountain style that I would say that you have here with this facility that you see all throughout this community. That is important to you all. Green space is important to you all. Got a great dog park, got Buckeye Recreation Center, some other facilities, but really they're in the core of the community outside of Sledding Hill, which is probably more of a wintertime activity, and then the dog park. Not a whole lot of central green space that we have. And then you see some of the other ones here, but you can see, again, this is the 448 people that answered this. What are your priorities for this district? Lower on the priority list was bicycle friendliness, which, you know, when we look in the comments, you see folks saying we really need to be more bicycle friendly, have a little bit more infrastructure as far as that's concerned. And other people are like, what are you, crazy? This is a mountain. I'm not driving my bike up that hill. There's e-bikes for that, which is good. An interesting quality of retail options ranked lower. And I think that was because if we look at this and compare it to the rest of the questions that were answered, people are saying over and over again, we need commercial and services to support us. I think here, it's just that word quality for some reason and people's interpretation of this question made it rank a little bit lower. But again, that will come out a little bit more as we talk about it. But some of the comments on this one that struck me is, you know, we think of the mountains as our home community. We need to focus on the needs of the locals versus tourists in order to sort of grow our community. When I say grow, I mean grow our assets, grow our destinations, grow our amenities, not just grow our warm bodies and humans here. But I think that was really important because of saying, I think it's easy to put our future, our answers to these questions in a local versus visitor bucket. And I get that, and that's important. But when we're talking about the appeal of what this district ultimately becomes, it needs to be relevant, honestly, first and foremost, in my opinion, to the locals. And when I say the locals, I'm not just talking about the 681 people that live in Beech Mountain. I'm talking about the 681 people that live in Beech Mountain, the however many people that live here for 6 months of the year, as well as that expanded market. Fred's market, his customer base does not stop at the municipal boundaries. That business is relevant to people that live all throughout the area. And that's what I think is important. This isn't a visitor versus local thing. This is how can we cultivate an environment that's going to be relevant to both. And one of the things that we found in visitor-oriented communities is the values that the locals have and the values that the visitors have are really the same. It overlaps tremendously as far as that's concerned. But I wanted to call that out. This isn't a visitor versus a local thing, particularly when we're thinking about providing for the local market. Unified appearance, that mountain style design was mentioned. Not having any big boxes were mentioned a lot. I don't think you would ever have a big box here, but if you take that to the logical extension and you see it in some of the other comments, I think a lot of people are thinking chains. You know, they want more independent type businesses or maybe regional chains as opposed to, hey, let's have a Dollar General here. You know, I'm reading into the comments a little bit there, but I feel like that folks really want unique, independently owned businesses in this area that we're talking about. Now, and you'll hear me mention this quite a bit, this broad cross-section of people we've talked to, ages, visitors, full-time residents, straight up tourists, people that live here in their vacation home or second home. Everybody's got a different opinion on what their vision of the future is for the community. One of the things that we saw quite a bit in here, and you almost can't even weigh it, folks saying we need more business, we need things to support our community, we need a gas station because we can't get gas here, those types of things to support our locals. And there's a lot of folks that said, you know what, we don't need anything. I don't mind driving down to Banner L to get my gas. Everything that I can get at Fred's, which you can get so much at Fred's, it's amazing. There were a fair amount of comments about that. We don't need anything new. That wasn't the prevailing comment. This will come back on, I just stepped on the cord. That wasn't the prevailing comment, but that came up quite a bit in all of the comments that we have. Other thing that was needed, this is what we were talking about earlier, some of the services that might, not just businesses, but what about services? Urgent care came up quite a bit. Banking, to a lesser extent. Shared office space, workspace, post office. Those things are some of the services that came up, and you'll see that again later. Favorite places in Beech. And word cloud here, so y'all seen these before, you know that the ones that are the largest are the ones that came up the most. And the interesting thing to me here, again, this is nearly 500 people that are visitors, people that are locals, is the ones, for the most part, that are showing up the largest are our recreational uses that we have here. Our hiking trails, Buckeye Recreation Center, the Bark Park, Coffee Lake. Fred's is probably was mentioned the most. So you can see some businesses that you all really cherish. Fred's, the 5506, the ski resort obviously is a key business and all of that. But this was interesting to me because I thought that I didn't expect the recreational uses to rise to the top. I didn't have any preconceived notion as far as that's concerned, but when I looked at it, I was like, okay, these people really love their recreation amenities that they have here in the community. So this is really getting into the question of if we are going to invite new investment, new commercial, new residential, new services into our community, what do you all feel like is needed? First question, what retail and restaurants, businesses, do we need in Beech Mountain? And you can see the highest one ranking was our casual sit-down restaurants. We know that we've got seasonality challenges here in our community, obviously. We got a lot of the restaurants that close certain times of year. But we also heard, and I think this reflects that folks felt like in the conversations we've been having, not necessarily the survey, that you all really need more variety when it comes to restaurants. And I think that's where this comes in. Bakery was mentioned, family-friendly entertainment, family-friendly activities. That across the board, we saw people really longing for that here. And then you see some of the other businesses, like ice cream shop. I think an ice cream shop here would print money. I know you can get ice cream here right now. But ice cream, clothing, etc. You see the breakdown. The ones that weren't a priority were fast food restaurants. It kind of makes sense knowing this community. Bookstores, bike shop. And again, I know we can rent a bike here in this community right now. But those are the ones that kind of ranked a little bit lower. But you see some of the other things. Gas station, I mentioned family and kid activities, so thinking about services again, salon, plenty of none in there as well. I mentioned that in the previous slide, we get some of that. Urgent care, and did feel like fast service rates. The comments that were made about this weren't about McDonald's and Hardee's and fast food. I think that the intent there was, you can get casual restaurants that are fast service, but aren't those fast food chains. And I think that's the intent of that question. So that's retail and business. Then we asked about other types of businesses. So non-retail, non-restaurant. And again, urgent care, medical, high on the list. Salon again, that came out in the others in the previous one. Increased recreation and wellness, particularly indoors, came up. That's pretty cool. Theater or amphitheater came up quite a bit. And then you can see the ones that are low. Law office, any lawyers in the room? Okay. Good, because they don't want you. K-12 school, that kind of makes sense given the demographics of this community. That might change if the demographics of the community change, but that was not a priority here. You know, as mentioned earlier, shared office space, co-working space was something that was really important, but here it's something that didn't rank quite as high. Next was residential and lodging, and we put lodging in there as well because a lot of your residential that you have here, quite frankly, is lodging. Second homes, maybe even second homes that while the owner's away, they're leasing out short-term rentals or something. That's why I want to do lodging in here as well. So what are those things that you need? Other was the highest, and you can see the types of things, but mixed-use development was something, so residential, retail, office, the things that you might have when you think about traditional downtown, you have all that in a traditional downtown. You have that in Banner, you have that in Bing, you have that in Blowing Rock. And I think the answer to that is if we're looking at this district, we want a mixture of all this stuff. Hotel was important to people that were doing this survey. Things that were lower on the priority list was short-term rental. That came up quite a bit. We know that there's a proliferation of that in this community. We know that there's a market for it here in this community in terms of people that have a property and want to make some income from that property. There's a market for that here. There's also a market for it because whether or not we don't have other lodging, like a hotel, we know that there's a market, there's a desire to use those single-family homes as short-term rental. But people that answer the surveys like that, we got enough. Let's don't focus on that. One of the things, and I'm getting into a little bit of the weeds, within this commercial district, I'm calling it commercial district, and again, whenever I say that, I'm thinking mixed use, right? One of the things that we know that we can do is straight up not allow short-term rental in a commercial district, commercially zoned district in North Carolina. So, in that sense, if there were development of workforce housing or other type of housing in the commercially zoned district, you could limit that to people that live, well, it could still be it could still be second homes, but you could basically eliminate the short-term rental piece of that puzzle in that district. Getting into the weeds there a little bit, but that goes back to that not being a priority. But you can see the other. This was a common theme in every conversation that we've had, as well as in this survey. Workforce housing, seasonal housing, but also in general, more attainable and affordable housing in our area. That was something that was really a priority. Folks mentioned B&B, Memoir STR I mentioned. I apologize for this. I'm trying not to step on this cord. Temporary housing, again, that goes with that. And then newer housing stock. I mean, one of the things that's interesting to me is as we drive around here, there's plenty of new that's happening here. It may be a new house that's being built. It may be one that's being renovated. It may be one that's being added on to. But bear with me one second. I'm going to change this dongle so this helps. But we know that some of our housing was built 50 years ago. And it's a little dusty right now. And I think that the folks that were answering that question realized that, it'll pop back on here.
You want me to bring you out a cord in?
I don't think that's the problem. Sorry. All right, well, let's go back to the other one. I shouldn't mess with it. All right, I'll just be careful. New housing stock, that was mentioned. So what types of public spaces? So this is really getting into public elements that we might have in our downtown district or really throughout the community. Live music, events, again, parks and recreation. We love what we got. We need more. We want more. Those were high on the list. Gathering places. Looking at a way to make that area a destination for people to come and gather and enjoy events and things of that nature. And then things that rank low, art galleries, places of worship, etc. And then you can see the other things that were listed: nature and outdoors, self-guided walking tours, and not just, I mean, you can't walk the Town of Beech, but you can walk around the core of the community. But I think really in this particular comment, this was an individual comment, and I thought it was great. They said, you know what, we got a great story to tell here. We got a really cool history here. We've got this ecosystem that we love and we want to protect, and it would be cool if this self-guided walking tour interpreted that. I think that's a great idea. Seasonal festivals, this is something, by the way, I know that y'all do some of this, both at the town level as well as some of our individual businesses, which is great, is we'll program events in the seasons. That's when you can really broaden that local market footprint, is through strategic programming of activities that you have in the community. Springtime, when we have a lot fewer visitors than we do at other times of the year, that's a great time to have locally focused. And when I say locally focused, again, I'm talking about within a 30-minute drive of us, okay? Locally focused events that kind of draw our community in to celebrate our community. Amphitheater was mentioned as well. So what else? What else is needed for existing businesses or future businesses to be successful? Pedestrian improvements rank the highest. Connecting the businesses we have to other businesses and other activities. More regularly scheduled events. I just talked about that, but you all are telling us, yeah, this is something we need. More convenient parking options. Obviously, parking has come up over and over again. I know that parking is different today than it would be on MLK weekend when you're probably having the largest spike of skiers in town. Improved signage. Interesting today that, to be honest with you, it's interesting to me that ranks so low. And when we're talking about signage, we're talking about wayfinding signage, directional signage. Getting people to where they need to go in the community. And y'all have got such a unique network, if you will, of roadways here in this community. I mean, like Buckeye Recreation Center is a case in point. I have been up there, I don't know, maybe a dozen times, and I probably went a dozen different ways to get up there. Because there's all these different jogs and turns and switchbacks and different ways that you can go. And y'all do have wayfinding signs. Y'all do have some directional signs, and maybe that's the reason why it ranked lower. Folks are saying, we don't need it, we know where we're going. Who knows? Other, walking or biking to our destinations, and particularly, like I mentioned before, connecting destination. What can help our businesses? Affordable housing. If we have more housing here, more residents, that'll support our businesses more. Improve transportation from adjacent communities. You know, if you were in Vanderbilt, what about trying to find some options to draw you up here that aren't just you getting in your car? Maybe it's a shuttle. I know that's been talked about here. Other creative options for us connecting to our adjacent communities. This came up, I won't say it was quite a bit, but it was a theme that came up some. And that's like, you know, when we think about success, what success means to us and our businesses, we want to make sure that whatever happens is environmentally sensitive to the mountain and to the place that we love. Because that's, you know, when we talk about design and mountain design, that's one thing, but being sensitive to these great natural views and vistas and resources that we have is really important. Ideal vision for the commercial district, and I'm not going to read all of this, but I'll say that when we asked that question, the things that sort of rose to the top that were mentioned over and over again were things like design, and these are in no particular order. but designed. Whatever happens in this area, we want it to look nice. We want it to match our community. Whether that's mountain style, what have you, whether that's Beech Mountain style, what have you, that's something that's important. And I would certainly agree with it. Walkable, gotta have that. We want unique shopping. Again, that goes back to the no change. We want independence. We want things that are unique. Again, common theme. No change was a common theme. Mixed use with workforce housing. Common theme. And then again, with this question and others, there were some of those folks that said, we don't need anything. We've got everything that we need right now. But you see all of that I just mentioned, those common themes in that list. I will say this, and you can see there's lots of words, and these are long sentences that are here. One of the things that was really refreshing is everybody that did the survey, they were focused on the survey. And that happens when people really, really, really love their place. Okay? Even if they love their place and they see major challenges, that's part of loving your place. If something really bothers you about your place, traffic during Saturdays and the weekends in the winter are just horrible, I hate that. Well, that's okay. You still love your place and you're part of this conversation because you want to improve your community. We saw that all throughout the survey. People were really being deliberate and taking their time in answering all these questions. Couple final questions here about transportation, and then I'm going to shift back to the market data. Did ask folks about preferred method of getting around town. Obviously car, walk was next. Some people did feel like e-bikes would be great. ATVs, I've not seen one of those, but I know they exist. Shuttles, golf carts, side by side, these are the ways folks get around town. Motorcycle. Several comments on this question were about, we'd love our community to be more walkable, but it's not designed that way right now. We have to use the car. We don't want to have to always use the car. We want to be more walkable. Obviously, I've mentioned that several times. You can see that's a common theme, and you'll see that reflected in some of the designs. How is it difficult? Is it to cross the main road? It didn't seem like that was a big problem because you could see 60% of people thought it's not difficult to cross the main road, the parkway, versus, well, only in the weekends and wintertime. So, and really only 7% said it's very difficult. So I think people, even though we might not be as walkable as we'd like to be, folks, maybe they're used to it, but they don't feel like it's a huge challenge to cross the road. And describe traffic congestion. I mean, the main takeaway from here is, it's pretty much normal. The only time that it's really a challenge is in the seasonal spikes. Areas of frustration, the parkway during ski season over and over and over and over again. That probably came up a gazillion times in the comments for this, particularly around the road entrance, the resort entrance, ski resort, seasonal traffic again. And then one of the other things was mentioned that makes a lot of sense is there's only one road in and one road out of Beech Mountain. We know there's another road to get in and out, but for all intents and purposes, there's one road in and one road out, and that creates a challenge. Improvements needed, sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, again, walkability, shuttles or trolleys, connections throughout our community, maybe even the adjacent areas, trails. We love our trails. We want more of those. Like to see those improve. So you can see those priorities. So that's the survey. You don't need to worry about capturing this right this second because we do have those business cards that have those QR codes on it. But again, if you haven't taken the survey, please take it. It should take about 15 minutes of your time. All right, any questions about that before we shift back to an overview of the market research, beginning with kind of some Helene impact? Any questions about that survey? No. All right, cool. Ladies first.
Okay, thank you. I'm just curious who the audience is. I know this is a community survey and it's for people that fit into different categories of residency or businesses or whatever. But who are we trying to affect? Are we trying to
I will tell you on that, well, first, it's not my decision, that's y'all's decision for that. And hold that thought a little bit, because I think when we wrap this presentation, there'll be an opportunity for us to really kind of give our own thoughts about that. It's a great question. I would say, from my perspective as an economist and a planner, who that market is everyone. It's our locals, it's our second homeowners, it's our visitors. That's who our market is. That's what's important. Those are the people that are already engaged here in this community. So then we can look at other things too. Well, do we want to grow population-wise? We've heard a lot of, yes, we need more affordable housing, workforce housing. We need other variety of housing types of uses here. And then we've heard some folks say, you know, we're 681 people, we don't want to be 682. We don't want anything else, you know. So I think you could ask that question to everybody in this room and you might get a different opinion. But let's hold off on that because we can probably do that at the end. Sir, you had a question?
Yeah. My comment is, I hear you trying to interpret a lot of these. At times you're saying, one of the early slides that came in, is you're interpreting the skiing people as being what's important. That's not what the data shows, or not what the responses show.
I can't quite hear you, sir.
Sorry.
That's okay. I don't have it here.
Well, I have very to speak.
So I'll go through that. Please, that's question.
In one of your early slides, your data was set, I forget exactly the largest answers were like 80%. Then you interpreted that the skiing was a critical part of the data. How are you interpreting this data?
Well, you know, the way we are interpreting this data is everything that we're doing right now is input for us. These conversations, the conversations we've had around maps ever since we started this project, as well as this survey, as well as all the comments from that survey. You know, I can't look at an individual answer and get into that person's head and say exactly what they want, but when you look at the bulk of the input that we're receiving together, that's where we can make those educated inferences between the, you know, who's answering the question, what their intent happens to be. And then again, I just know from looking at the data that tourists aren't just skiers. They're not just skiers, but that's a bulk of them. I mean, in fact, the next slide, the 2 slides from now, you're getting ready to see exactly what I'm talking about. So the visitors, they're not just skiers. They're also people that are coming here to enjoy our outdoor resources. They're the people that this time of the year, maybe they have a second home, maybe they don't have a second home, that are coming and renting here and having a week-long family vacation. They're the people that travel through in October to see the great leaves that we have through all this region. So it's a great question because it's not just skiers, but we do know that the largest spike in our visitor seasons by far is the skiers. All right, this may answer some of those questions. So I'm going to get back. This is the transition area for where the folks that were here before, you'll see some data that you saw before. And I'm not going to go into this because of time and in as much detail as we did the last time. So those of you who were seeing it on the first time, y'all come ask me questions after. So I alluded to earlier that in order for us to determine what our market is, visitor market, local market, regional, trade area market, we use placer data. And placer data, I alluded to earlier, it's locational data that's captured from everyone's cell phones and other devices that shows where you happen to be. It shows all the visitors that come to a community. This is a huge tool in planning right now, particularly with tourism planning, but also economics and understand what your market is. So, last year, the year from April 1st of 2024 to March 31st of 2025, the reason why we did those dates is because that's when we basically started end of March on this project. between that one calendar year, so let's just say the last calendar year, Beech Mountain had 462,000 unique visits into our community. That's 202,000 unique people, unique visitors. That's a huge number right now. Half of your visits were individual visits. Like, if y'all may, over the course of a year, do y'all live here or do y'all second homeowners? Second homeowners. So you spend a certain amount of time here. So whatever that time is that you're here, it might be a week, it might be a month, it might be 6 months. You're getting counted multiple times in this number. So you may be 10 or 12 of these, or 50 of these, who knows. But from that, you're only one of these, one unique visitor. 202,000, half of our visits were unique visitors. That's pretty powerful there. And then it came from over 3,000 zip codes across the country, all 50 states, most North Carolina, Florida is second. That's been consistent across the board, whether it be our community survey, whether it be this, whether it be all the other data research that we've done. 13% from Watauga and Avery County, and then just 8% from our primary zip code. I talked about that before. So what this tells us is, again, what our local market is, what our regional market is, what our visitor market happens to be. So I use that to figure out what our local trade areas happen to be. And I won't go into the methodology about this, but we're looking at zip codes. And essentially, if we're thinking about our local market, so we're not talking about Florida folks here, we're talking about people that live within our region. The trade area that's relevant to us is this orange and purple area. Our primary trade area, 3 zip codes, 15,000 people, 10% of all of our visits in our community are in these 3 zip codes. That's our bread and butter local market. Secondary trade area, 7 visits, 20,000 people, and about 3% of all of our visits is this purple area. That's our secondary trade area. And you can see it kind of pulls to the north and the south and a little bit to the west. We heard a lot that a lot of our workers are coming over from Tennessee, particularly our seasonal workers, and that might be one of the reasons why we're pushing that way. But that's important because those workers, while they're here, they're part of our market, okay? So that's still really important. So this is our local trade area. Now, one of the things that was mentioned the last time, and I'm glad it was, and I think it was mentioned twice before it got through my thick skull, is we kind of had a little event last year, at the end of September, that changed the rest of the year for us. So, don't look at this. Don't look at these numbers up top or this right now. This is last year. Starting in April, going through March, and you can see every one of these tall spikes, that's a Saturday in the wintertime, by the way. And you can see where your spikes happen to be. Summertime spikes, leaf season, October. It is flatline because of Helene. Now, somebody mentioned, Blowing Rock didn't have as much impact and as much damage as we did. We did the same analysis for Blowing Rock, and sure enough, it showed in their data it flatlined for maybe a week, and then it got larger. Now here's the real impact of Helene to you all. I did the same thing, but I pulled the previous year. So 23-24 as opposed to 24-25. No Helene. The previous year had more visitors overall. 21% drop from the previous year to this year. That's Helene related. Unique visitors had, 25% more-ish? My math is probably not great on the fly. Oh, there we go. I did it already with like a calculator. 23% drop in unique visitors. And the big one, when we look at that circle right there, 356% drop in the leaf season. From 39,000, close to 40,000 unique visits. Again, this is just 1 month that I took on this. to almost, just about 500, 8,700 people. 356 drop from the previous year to Helena year. And not only that, each one of these spikes in the winter, a couple of months had passed. Some communities were impacted worse than others. You obviously got back on your feet, at least from a resort standpoint. It's where you still had those winter spikes, but none of those spikes were as tall as they were the previous year. So even though we flatlined, that impact definitely continued through the end of the year. And probably still going a little bit right now, but we can pull the data next year and see post-Helene what happened. Significant impact. Overall, 21% decrease. In our leaf season, 356% decrease. That's pretty striking here. Now the interesting thing is, I ran these numbers, and I fully expected this to happen, by the way. Trade areas worked out to be the exact same thing. That's usually what happens, because again, these are local. This is our local bread and butter market, and they still are here, during those times. But that's really, really important. So we did have that loss in traffic, but our trade areas stayed the same. Our visitor numbers are different, but our local trade areas are the same. So that's the Helene impact. So now I'm going to go rapid fire through some slides that will probably bore you, but because of that, I'm going to go quickly and just hit on a couple of highlights. Once we figured out that baseline market study, we looked at really everything in terms of the market: demographics, housing, retail, dining, all of that. Big thing is, you are 681 people here in this community. You're a small community. We know you're bigger than you're technically small in terms of full-time residents, but we know you're much bigger than that because of second homes. You're really bigger than that. You've had slow growth since 2020, which is interesting. But your growth is higher than the rest of the region. Over the next 5 years, projected growth is faster than the rest of the region. And then your median household income, this green one right here is Beech Mountain proper, the town of Beech Mountain proper, is higher than anywhere else in this region. Again, things that you probably already know, but the data is bearing it out. When we look at housing, median home values, $463,000. You can see with occupied homes, that number, again, one of the higher numbers in the entire region. A couple of other things that I think are really important. I quizzed somebody on this earlier and she hit the nail right on the head, and she wasn't in the previous discussion. 77% of your homes here are second homes or vacation homes. 77% are not full-time residents. That's big. I've never seen that amount. I've seen 50-50 in some places. I've never seen close to 80%. And then the other thing is we looked at affordability, and 26% of your homeowners are considered to be cost burdened. And what that means is they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs. And that might be mortgage plus utilities, it might be rent. Well, it's not in this case because it's only just mortgage plus utilities. That number's not something I'm super concerned about, because I see that in other places. A quarter of our homeowners are spending a little bit beyond their means. But that's an indicator that says, maybe we do need some more attainable housing options in our community. So now I'm going to pause a little bit more on this. One of the main reasons why we figure out what our local trade areas is to see what demand there is for commercial and dining within our community. And it's really important because, again, these are the people. This is our local market. This is our bread and butter market. These are the people that are going to make our businesses sustainable over the course of the year. So that they'll be able to iron out those seasons, right? And for everybody that was here before, all these numbers are the same that you saw before. So basically, we wanted to drill down to what is the demand that we have. The main study we do is a retail leakage study, and it's a simple supply and demand study. We compare what the stores sell, the stores that exist within our geography sell on an annual basis, to what consumers who live in our trade areas, people that live in this trade areas, what they're spending on an annual basis. If residents are spending more than the businesses are selling, that means dollars are leaking. They're going to other places because that particular good or service isn't located. So for example, I used gas station as an example earlier. You got to go out of town to get gas here right now. That's what we're trying to drill down to. What are those opportunities? You all have a very small commercial market. That makes sense because we don't have a whole lot of commercial, right? About $500.4 million last year was your total market for the commercial businesses. That's Beech Mountain proper, but if we look at the demand within our orange and purple trade area, it's $331 million. This is the beginning of telling us what our opportunities are based on what the market demands, market needs. And you can see all of these categories. When I have, it doesn't really matter what these numbers happen to be, but when I have two numbers here, the first number is the primary trade area, the orange area. The second number is the secondary trade area, the purple. And you can see, like with restaurants, that's a good example. There's $6 million of unmet demand in that restaurant market in the orange area. There's $46 million in the purple area of unmet demand. So you can see all the different categories that come up. I'm not going to go through those because the next slide will really kind of take this and interpret that. But this is what's showing demand. However, you all know community, no matter what you build, you're not going to be able to recapture 100% of that $331 million in our combined demand. You're not going to capture 100% of that. You don't want to capture 100% of that in this town. So what we do is we look at capture scenarios. If we were to focus the economic development efforts in our core study area that we're talking about right now, if we're marketing our community and our businesses to that orange and purple region, we can recapture a certain amount of those dollars that are leaking. People are still going to go down to their favorite restaurant once a month down in Manor Elker and Boone. They're going to continue to drive to Walmart on occasion when they need all of those staple goods that you can't necessarily get in Fred's, even though if you can't get it there, then you don't need it, right? And I'm sure that's something he said before. People are going to continue to shop online for certain things. Now, I will say all these numbers account for all of that. Shopping online is accounted for in that, but because that's usually a question. But I say that to say we're not going to capture 100% of that. People are going to still continue to do certain things, but through strategic economic development and marketing, we absolutely can. So I did a couple of scenarios capturing a portion of that. If we ever did capture 20% of what's leaving our primary trade area and 10% of what's leaving our secondary trade area, that's not much, by the way. This is very conservative. On the low end, we have demand for about 101,000 square feet of new commercial space and restaurant space in our community. On the high end, which is 30% of those three orange zip codes, and 15% of those 7 purple zip codes. Again, really small pieces of that pie, that demand pie. That could be up to 152,000 square feet of new space. And here's how it all breaks down. Some of the key opportunities: gas, mentioned that before. There's certainly demand for that. Drugstore, there's demand for that here. You don't have that. Grocery, there's demand for it here, but not nearly enough for conventional grocery store. There's not nearly enough demand for that. But there's demand enough for it to tell Fred, hey, you know what? You could probably expand your grocery offerings here because there's demand for it. Or maybe there's an independent small grocer, fresh vegetable market, those sorts of things that could fill in that niche with that smaller demand. Clothing, there's lots of, that makes sense. There's no clothing that you can buy here except for some t-shirts and hats and threads in this community, and there's demand for that here. Furniture, that makes a lot of sense, by the way. In a community like yours that A, is growing, and B, there's a lot of new investment even in the existing housing stock that you have here, renovations and those sorts of things, new houses being built, there's always demand for new furniture. Y'all got in the larger area, and particularly down in Banner Elk, I know there's a couple of nice furniture, unique furniture places that's down there, but even that's all accounted for here. There's demand for furniture. Sporting goods, there's demand for that here as well. That makes a lot of sense in a community that has so many outdoor resources and activities. So the point of this is based on this whole study, based on our trade areas, based on this conservative capture scenario, you all could accommodate 152,000 square feet of new space in your community, which could accommodate all these things, or it might be an existing business, like I said before, expanding their merchandising offerings. So that's really the bulk, and you'll see this being accommodated in some of our strategies that will be shared with you this evening for that. And one last piece of this, restaurants are showing a lot of demand here. Again, keep in mind we're talking about that large 10 zip code trade area that we're talking about here. So it's not just the people that live in Beach. There is strong demand that's being generated in our local market. However, most of that demand, and in fact, all of that demand in our primary trade area is in limited service restaurants. And that's, for all intents and purposes, it's not just fast food, but it's primarily fast food. So there's demand for restaurant. We talked about that before, and people are like, well, why do we have these restaurants that have to close during the wintertime? And there's a number of reasons for that. It's not just market related or demand related. But the reality is that 25,000 square feet of opportunity is in a business type, to go to the latest question earlier, may or may not be part of our vision. Do we want that here? I would venture to say, again, when I look at the answers in our survey, that we don't want change fast food restaurants in our town. So that might not be as much of an opportunity as we see. But when we see comments about we want more variety of dining, we want year-round dining, we want casual sit-down services, casual restaurant dining, those ice cream shops, all of that kind of fall into this potential. So we looked at also short-term rental. I'm not going into this to say you've got a massive market. You all know this. It's a big moneymaker here for people that do actually put their homes on the short-term rental market. But look at this scatter plot. It's not a scatter plot, but look at this map of where they all happen to be in this area. I think that's a gazillion. It's actually 3,000, but still, you see, there's a ton. We've worked in other destination communities that have a lot of short-term rental, not seeing the level that we see here. But even then, your occupancy rate's not all that high. That tells me you've got a ton. Is the market saturated? Possibly. Do we need some other alternative? This shows there's a lodging demand. The question here is when we see some of these other numbers is, do we need other alternative lodging, like a hotel or other types of lodging? That's what begs the question here, other than we know there's a demand for it. We looked at employment, not going to go into that. We looked at the broader visitor market. This really talks about that just the downtown area itself and previous 2 years and the visits and where people are coming from. One interesting thing that is about this, that last year, again, this is the Helene year. Last year's data 75% of the visitors that came here were from 50 miles plus away. They're from more than 50 miles away. That's huge number. Now, 50 miles away, that could, I mean, that's Charlotte, you know, but that could be Florida as well. So, and I'm not going to go through this. Y'all saw this last time. We did look at it by season: ski season, summer season, leaf season, and I talked already about the Halloween impact that's shown there. We compare you to, by the way, these weren't on the same scale the last time they were this time, so the spikes all hit each other, but this is Beach compared to Banner Elk compared to Blowing Rock during the Halloween year. See our flat line there, you see it flat line in Banner Elk, but not quite as long as it did here. And it was mentioned, hey, Blowing Rock wasn't hit nearly as hard as us, and you can see a short-term impact there before they started getting back to it. So that's it. That's what I have to share with you all. Kayleen has been showing me signs that I've been going over. So we got about 15 minutes. I would love either questions that you all may have, or I'll turn it back to you all. 2 questions. What types of businesses or uses, we'll ask that question first. What types of businesses or uses would you like to see in this future downtown area?
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
I came back up here in 2004,
2001, full time.
2001, I've been coming since 1970.
Just
In my
beginning.
20s and I'm 75 now. I love this community, we were military, we were very much inbred into the community. Love the fact that when we came back, everybody was open, welcome, and it was a great place to live. Now in 2001, I worked in the real estate business, but then I went into the short-term sales. I have watched Beech Mountain go through its economic times, and I'm going to say mostly since 2001. We hit 2005, 2006, 2007. I got out of the real estate business because of the economy. Everybody was caught with mortgages too high, the prices were too high. We sold houses that were in the $200,000 to $300,000 category that were thinking with people that own them. Now those houses are going for $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. During that time, we plateaued and we stayed. We didn't fall, but we felt the economic times. The short-term sales started moving. COVID, and I don't see that in here. COVID totally opened us up.
Yeah.
Okay? From that point on, we saw a lot more people coming up here and buying and saying, I want to live here. Why? One of the comments was, it's a safe haven. I like the community. I like the fact that you have your own fire department, your own police department, and you're a city. You're not a gated community. You have people that live here and people that own second homes and people that come and visit. I like changing the seasonal capability. Right now, I am retired. I gave up 78 homes up here. Okay? I'm retired. Statistically, what I am seeing now is we're going back to pre-COVID time. That the short-term sales are not renting as they were.
I think that the data does actually show what you're saying. It absolutely does. And what's a couple things you mentioned, when we work in other destination communities, it's very common that the 2009, 2011 housing bubble crisis, recession, Great Recession, it was felt in our destination communities, but the destination communities didn't have quite as devastating of an impact as other places have. And the second thing is we see in every place too, and I think you see it here. This goes back to 2022. I can go back to 2020. Is ever since short-term rentals existed, destination communities have been on the leading edge of that. That's where they first, I mean, they existed before we ever even called them short-term rentals, and we had Vrbo's and Airbnbs. We had a delivery system for them. It existed before then, so it's existed here since the 70s, right? Because that's what you are. But the communities like you all, their destination, really got rolling with that short-term rental market that we're familiar with today. And in particular, it has grown significantly since 2020. But you can see that a little bit here. You can see, I mean, obviously we've got our peaks in the year, but this is from 2022 to 2025. And you can see it's basically an upward trend line in terms of the demand, booking demand. However, we've got so many more units now. The occupancy rate is probably lower. That's what you're telling us than it was. Maybe it's, and I've seen that here. Year over year, the occupancy rate has, from 2025, which is this number, 2024, occupancy rate has definitely dropped from 2024 to 2025. So the data is confirming everything that you have just mentioned.
But is the occupancy rate dropping because the volume of available units is higher?
It's a major reason. It's
Yep.
a major reason. Actually, in my statistics of the 78 homes that I finally built up to, okay, a lot of them are now starting to sell because they're not renting as much as they were, previously. However, for me, being a businesswoman, I had a restaurant in Vanderbilt back in the 70s. And we actually learned how to live in Vanderbilt through seasons. Sustainability. But you are looking up here, the sustainability of 5 months of nothing, in a sense.
Okay.
5 months out of 12.
And
That you've got to really.
no, I'm with you. I agree with you. I'm not.
And I can see a village concept. However, when we compare ourselves to Blowing Rock, we have 321, we have 421 that comes into Blowing Rock, which is a bigger access capability that we don't have and never will because the state will never, ever, ever widen Beech Mountain Park. So that's the transportation problem. I'm saying we can grow, and we have, but we're also looking at a market that we saw up on Beech Mountain this year drastically. They were here skiing, they were here snowboarding, but they were not eating with us, they were not shopping with us, and you can see that by the garbage on the slopes. They packed their bags, okay, and they brought their food with them. So a lot of that population that you're talking about is not coming up here so much to spend money. The renters will spend money, but and the reason I quit, when I have an eight sleeping unit, and I have 20 people in it, so that has become a bigger trend too up here, where the housing for the affordability of your renters, okay, is increasing, substantially. Because I used to only see it a little while and a little time, but by the time it hit last year and the beginning of this year, man, and employment, employees, sustainability of being able to sustain your labor force.
Right.
Okay, coming up this mountain, especially in the winter, okay? I mean, I had a van bringing up a lot of my employees with four-wheel drive because they would not drive up this mountain. And they can't afford to live up here either.
Right, and there's not a single thing that you said that I disagree with. And I would say a couple things on that. one is, you're talking about the skiers that come in and they're not really going to purchase anything here. There's probably folks that are coming here right now that are going on vacation for a week with their family that are bringing their food in with them, right? And they may go out and eat one time during the week, but they're bringing everything else with them. So they're not really necessarily dropping a whole lot of dollars other than lodging taxes and the one time they go out. But I think that's sustainability. That's what I think, if there's anything that this data tells us, that word sustainability comes up. There's all this demand. There's legit, real demand that's out there. But we know, we're talking about comparing beach to Blowing Rock, I had that on the slide. But, the reality is you really can't compare Beech Mountain to any other place because y'all are so unique and different. But you can look at those regional dynamics you're talking about. And when we're talking about sustainability, there's really three things, I think, that, see if my mind will stay straight on this, that you mentioned that I think is important. One, if we want sustainable businesses, first thing is we have to truly have a critical mass of business, okay? Whether it be restaurants, whether it be shopping. People aren't shopping here. I got one place to shop here. That's it. One place to shop here right now, which is insanely incredible, one of the coolest places in the world. But that's it, so we don't have that critical mass. The second thing is, point number 2, is sustainability. We need our businesses here to be relevant to our 681 people that live in our town limits, to the second homeowners that are here for an extended period of time that truly are locals while they were here, as well as be relevant to that larger immediate market, 28604 extended market. That's where a lot of that demand is. So whatever we cultivate here has to be relevant to our locals, but it's also got to be relevant to our more immediate regional locals as well. Any successful business you have in any destination community is going to have that. It's going to have that loyal local market from that extended immediate trade area. That's how they're sustainable. Having more of a critical mass of that helps you be more sustainable. The other piece that you mentioned is residences. And folks, particularly workforce, can't afford to live here. And that's true. You can't. You have to shuttle in. You have to commute from Tennessee, and then during the wintertime when the roads are bad, and the businesses are probably having some staff not show up because of that. So part of sustainability may be looking at other housing options here in our community, to where there is housing that some of our worker base can actually live in here in our community. And again, it depends on sort of the vision of this larger plan, which you all are sharing your vision with us. Some of that type of housing could be accommodated in this study area that we're talking about, potentially. So the point is sustainability. Things are more of a challenge here because of seasonality. But the other communities that we know of that have that seasonality have cultivated that sustainability by growing critical mass, by being more relevant to their extended local market, and by bringing in new warm bodies to live there. And there may be differing opinions of, I don't want anybody else living here, versus we need housing for workers. And there may be people that'll live and die by their vision of that. So I'm not saying that's the answer. I'm just saying that that's a piece of that sustainability equation.
I'm gonna give you some different perspective here. First of all, I applaud the Town of Beech Mountain for doing this. I know change is difficult. Some are gonna embrace it and some are not gonna embrace it. But if Beech Mountain's gonna stay relevant, and I don't wanna say you're competing with the other communities, Banner has its uniqueness. Blowing Rock has its uniqueness. Boone has its uniqueness. But there is not enough to do to sustain to keep people up here and spending their money up here. My husband is a southern bred boy, grown up in Rockingham County. Grew up coming up to the land of Oz. Very nostalgic for him. I grew up in Southern California. I left 3 million people in North Carolina. Very different backgrounds.
Yep.
But yet we still want the same thing up here. We want this small town feel. We want to stay up here, have a nice meal up here at a nicer restaurant. We go to Bannerelle, we go to Boardwalk, we drive all over while we're up here. If there were more retail, more walkability, we probably would stay up here for a whole weekend. But for me, and for us, it's not enough. We eat at our restaurants, we shop at Fred's. I have God knows how much money we spent there, and we go down the hill, and we go down the hill, and we go down the hill. And the reality is, we need a walkable community. This is a great concept. I applaud the town for doing it. Stay vigilant, make it happen. Surveys are what they are. You get a small percentage. I just went through a downtown master plan process in the community I live. I'm in downtown development there.
Which community?
It's Elon. It's a
I know,
college
it's
town.
college town, yeah, I know
Yes.
Elon.
Yes, so, it's tough, but, the more you do this, and this room should be full of people. That's part of the problem. You have these community meetings and a very small percentage of the people show up. You want to have a voice, come, express those opinions, share your thoughts.
Come back tonight, this room's gonna be full of us, by the way.
Okay, well, you gotta come back.
I hear
gotta
you.
go home because
I hear you loud and clear on that. I will say, we have done collectively since we've been doing this, we've been very deliberate, intentional about getting the word out. And I will say, from the engagement that we've had, there's been lots of numbers here. The last time we were here was a smaller room, but every single meeting we had pulling chairs for some of them. The survey, close to 500 people. And they've also, Kate and Whitney have actually been going into, they're doing pop-up engagement at some of our events and then the weekends that we've had here to draw out more ideas from people. And the conversation's still going on, by the way. But I feel you're right. We're not going to get here from every single person in a place. And I don't know that I've ever worked in a place where we've heard from a perfect cross-section of the community, but I feel full confidence that we're getting a good, well-rounded level of input here, foundational input that I'm not used to. We don't normally see that. And that all goes back to you all love your community and you want it to you want it to work better for you. And whether that means everything that you've just said, or whether that means, I just need more recreation, or whether that means I just don't want anything to change. Whatever your opinion is, that's what's important to you. And I feel like we're getting the full spectrum. Yes, sir.
The 28604 market area that you were talking about, I'm not sure how large that is. I couldn't tell on the map what we're talking about, but we're talking about trying to draw those dollars or more of those dollars to Beech Mountain or have them spent to Beech Mountain, correct?
Yep. Yes.
So we're drawing people up the mountain, getting them to come up here and shop, correct?
That
More the local people.
absolutely, yes. Yes.
Because I'm a business in a tourist destination, and of course, during the time when the tourists are there, it's crazy busy, but you have to depend on your locals to get you through when they're not here. So the concept is to draw more of that local market to shop here.
Yep. That is.
Or not go off the mountain also to spend somewhere else.
Yep. Keep some of that here by having the businesses that support you, but you're absolutely right. How can we grow that market and not depend on tourists year round? We've got a great, robust tourist market, which is important. That's part of your sustainability equation, but that local market. And here's a good case in point, and you've probably seen some of this here. And this speaks to the challenge of when there's demand and there's opportunity, but there might not be that critical mass, how it's still a challenging place. Are any of y'all familiar with Damascus, Virginia? Got a couple in the room. Damascus is I love it. It's an awesome place. Small little town on the river, not too far from Abingdon. Most people are familiar with Abingdon. They have a small little downtown area. They've got wonderful outdoor recreation resources. They're called Town USA. Mix USA Coast to Coast Bike Trail goes through there. The Virginia Creeper goes through there. They have a massive tourist visitor impact. Now, a lot of theirs is happening in summer and fall. So their winter is dead. Okay? They've always struggled with being relevant to their locals. There are about 800 people in their town. They're about close to 700 in this town. That's where the similarities end, by the way, because your destination is different than theirs. But there's this one location. It's a good location, right in the main intersection of downtown, that has had, since I've worked in that community for 15 years on various projects, it seems like just about every time I go there, it's a different restaurant. And there's demand and need for restaurants, but the challenge is sustaining that over the course of the year. Now, they've done a great job of doing that through programming events, through recruiting some businesses that are more, that connect more to that expanded local market. They're actually extending their good season by trying to make it more sustainable. But even then, with that particular location in that community, you see they've got all these wonderful visitors that come to their community, but that one location, that restaurant can't sustain itself over the course of a few years. Now, granted, I will say this, when we're talking about retail, we're talking about commercial, the most challenging and difficult business to run is a restaurant, period. So they have dynamics that are different than Fred's, much different than a business like Fred's. So that sustainability equation is even a little bit more different and you'll see that here. But if there's more of a critical mass, even with restaurants, you're going to be more relevant to that larger local market. That's going to extend your local city. Any other questions? Because we're going over time. Was there one over here before we come back? Oh, that was you? Yes, ma'am.
The other thing I wanted to mention is that the growing usage or desire in this area, that the barn, wedding events, that has contributed tremendously to this, okay? And having country weddings. Now that's a different market. I haven't heard anything about that kind of market. This beautiful building right here for meetings, I'm not hearing any attraction to corporations of having meetings up here. Okay, that would also increase the usage of the renters up here and the getaway aspect of getting the corporation up here to relax and have their meetings and at the same time have their outdoor activities. Okay, I don't hear that. But that to me seems to be a little bit more sustainable here. Now, for example, a bookstore. I've always wanted a bookstore. My husband is absolutely excited that I got involved in the book exchange down in Mountain Road. But that's the only thing that has been sustainable. I couldn't afford to put a bookstore up here or even in Mountain Road to be able to sustain myself through the 12 months. It just doesn't work in a business plan. Okay? Now, we've had one dress shop in Mountain since 1971 when I came here, or 74. One dress shop. Has there been another dress shop down in Mountain And boy, they have more trade down there than we do up here. Do the people in Mountain come up here? They come up here for our events, our weddings, our meetings, if we have meetings. Attract them to come up here with their business meetings and all that.
Right. No, I hear you on that. And that's a good point. And two things that you touched on here, and this wasn't your main point. Are people coming up here? They're not coming up here for commerce because there's not commerce here. I'm sure there's lots of folks in Banner that comes to Fred's because, again, if you haven't figured it out, I
We
love
have
that.
buses in the summer that come up here and visit just because Fred is here.
But that's it. That's the only game in town. To your other point, and I know that's not what you were really focusing on, But I do know that there's a significant event, and particularly wedding market here in this beautiful community. And you've got venues that help support that. But and we do also know, and I know because my daughters have done this and my niece has done this, we know that you'll have a lot of wintertime church groups come up into your community. But I haven't heard, and maybe y'all know, I haven't heard much about that corporate function. Maybe people come in for a corporate retreat or things of that nature.
We have,
Katie?
well, we try to market to that, but I think without a hotel or something, it's really
Good
hard
point.
to get the like, wedding people are willing to, have their guests stay in Airbnb, the Pinnacle and that type of thing, but the corporation really wants a hotel to have their,
That's fair.
full retreat.
That's fair. So your facility, this facility, other
Yeah.
venues it might have, by that comment, might be more marketable, sustainable to that corporate market if we had other lodging
Yeah.
alternatives. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Would people come from Bannerell? Would they stay in Bannerell and have their corporate event up here? Because the building that does out there.
Absolutely. That probably, this study didn't look at lodging other than short-term rentals, but I think like right now, if somebody's staying for a week in Bannerell, because they got plenty of visitors too, they'll probably come down this way. Once or twice while they're here, yes.
Is there I think what most you just did also everybody's kind of that elephant in the closet is like, how do you reach the critical mass? Because if there was a critical mass and Beech Mountain was Highlands or was Blowing Rock, I don't think it's necessarily the drive. I think it's just
Yeah.
nobody's gonna come up here just for friends.
You're not gonna come here to shop if there's no shopping to do.
But what does it take to get to the critical mass? Because the first person that does a store, probably, if it's not supported.
That's fair.
It takes 2, 3, 4, 5.
First thing to reach critical mass is to understand what the opportunity happens to be. If you try to, which we've done here in this process, if you focus and this happens in communities all the time, if you focus your efforts on something that there's zero market for in your community, it's probably not going to be sustainable. But if you know what there's opportunity for, that's the first step to getting to whatever that critical mass happens. And critical mass, that's a very amorphous thing we're describing here. Knowing what our opportunity, priority number one. Priority number two is focusing our economic development efforts, either from the town standpoint or investor standpoint, on cultivating those types of businesses, whether it be a hotel, whether it be a casual dining restaurant, whether it be a gas station, whether it be urgent care. Knowing what the demand is and then focusing our economic development and recruitment efforts on that. Doing it in a planned way in our study area that we're talking about, if we're able to capture some of this opportunity, all of this opportunity in that area, and that's our vision, and that's what we're going for from a public sector standpoint, from a private sector standpoint. That's how we, over time, will grow that critical mass. I don't think there's any magic number, but having more than one shopping establishment in your community, having those types of services that local people need and might even make it easier for you all to live here, say if we had an urgent care, those are the types of things that will help us grow that critical mass. It's going to make us more relevant to that extended local market.
But can you back into what you need based on, I volunteer up here a lot, and most people come up here that I talk to hike. So would you back into that and provide services that hikers would want? Or the casual dining?
100%. Absolutely. And when you do that, you're actually going to be creating more opportunity. So say we're developing more recreational uses. And we know that maybe our regional folks that are coming up and are using our trails, they're not coming here and staying overnight, but they're coming here and they're here for the day, and you know, they may want to have a beer afterwards, or they may want to go out to eat afterwards. That's great, and that's how they can only really interact in this community right now. Well, they're good friends. But maybe as we cultivate that market, maybe as we grow that market, that might create more demand for an outfitter in our community. And not just an outfitter that's renting skis, by the way, and snowboards, but an outfitter where you can go and get a fishing pole. Can you get a fishing pole at Fred's? You probably can. But still, you know, you get what I'm saying. Yeah, I did see that. I did see that on the door yesterday, fishing licenses. But the point is, you're absolutely right. If you grow that corporate market, that's going to expand that potential. If you grow that bridal market, that's going to expand opportunities for other businesses as well. That's how that critical mass grows. And it's a tough thing. Sorry, it's a tough thing, particularly for existing businesses to understand. You're telling me, Aaron, that you're going to want to bring more competition for my restaurant here in this community? I don't like that. But the reality is, and we know this from place after place after place, if you have a collection of dining establishments, if you have that critical mass of dining establishments, you have more options, they're all going to be actually more successful. But it's a tough thing, and I get it. If I'm a business owner and I have a restaurant and I'm killing it and I'm doing well and I'm busy and I know what my challenges are seasonally, I know what my challenges are workforce, and Aaron, you're telling me that you're bringing in more competition. I get it. I understand that. But there's a jump between competition and critical mass that generates more opportunity. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your thought.
Like you said, like what's the ideal pace?
Of what?
Pace.
Pace?
Yeah, pace. Speed. Like it's like kind of like growing. And I think that my fear is that if it's slow, then like I said, it's going to be really tough. We're going to bump into problems every day.
I mean, that's a good question. I think that
because it take a developer to say, boom, we're going to do this.
it can, and even the developer's not going to do everything. But you're right. I mean, I mentioned the Damascus example earlier, which is, I think, is a good answer to your question. That's a community that's been working on building that critical mass for 2 decades. And they're finally getting to that critical mass. They still got some challenges. They haven't overcome everything. They've been working on it a long time. And I understand from an investment standpoint too, time is money, obviously. And someone had mentioned, it might have been you, Walt, that sometimes you get those pioneers that come in when there's opportunity, when there's demand, but there might not be that critical mass yet. It's a lot harder for them early on to get that traction. Here's I think a big opportunity here that's different than Damascus and other places. If you've got a receiving area that's a blank canvas that we all are crafting future vision for in this commercial district downtown, we know that the town's going to focus on it. We know there's some local investors that are looking forward to an opportunity in this community. The fact that you have that receiving area, you have that sort of blank canvas here that we're crafting this vision for, that increases the pace. Because we have created a vision, we know what our opportunity is, we've had this community conversation, we know that our town's focused on reaching this vision. Those are the types of things that can increase that pace. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no.
I mean, other ways you can increase pace is through incentives for certain types of development and the things that you need. There's lots of tools to where you can, recruitment tools and economic development tools that you can use to accelerate pace and accelerate us realizing this vision as well. And all that's going to be part of the strategy part of this project. So we are over time. I appreciate y'all's patience. and listening. I will answer anybody's questions for as long as y'all want to ask me questions, but I'm going to stop the meeting right now, and y'all just come up to me afterwards and we can talk one-on-one. Come back tonight. Is it 6 o'clock? 6 o'clock right here. Come back. This has been advertised at 5, so if you're thinking 5, that has been changed, but like in the announcements, but some of you may have older things that show 5 o'clock. It's at 6 tonight here. But other than that, if y'all have any other questions, just come and ask me.